What's going on, guys? PXCam20 back in with a brand new video. We are here at Dragon Trail Seaside Edition for a brand new week of daily races, except this isn't the original Seaside of Dragon Trails. This is actually layout number 2, which is the reverse edition of this track. And I have to say, this track is probably the most awkward feeling track I've ever raced on. I've never done a race on here. I've never even done a time trial on here. So it just feels really, really weird going through all these familiar corners just backwards, and it just doesn't feel correct. But I mean, it makes for really fun racing. I'm not trying to complain here. I mean, I really do like the layout, and I like the track, and I like the way that all the races have been coming out, but it's just very, very weird. It's just very surreal just because of everything that happens on this race. But we are starting here in 4th place, as we did put a qualifier lap in. It wasn't the fastest qualifier lap, but at the time, which was basically like an hour into the week of the new daily races, it was about like 8th or 9th fastest in the United States. So I just took it and ran with it. So you can see right here we're starting in 4th, right behind a few Americans and a Brazilian in 1st place, as we have a Mexican behind us and a Colombian in the lobby, as well as a Canadian. So jumping into the race, you know, I did do a little bit of practice laps, so I did feel really confident, but I decided to pick the Peugeot because I found out that the Peugeot was actually pretty fast on here, especially because there's a lot of long straightaways. So it just really helped out with the car being such a good top end speed car, so we decided to go on with that. So before we jump into the video, if you guys really enjoy the content, we're trying to reach the goal of 10,000 subscribers before the end of the year. So if you guys really enjoy the content, please subscribe to the channel and leave a like on the video, as it really helps out the channel when you guys do so. Anyways, that's enough promoting myself. Let's jump straight into the video. So jumping into the race, we get our 3, 2, 1, and we are a go here on the brand new week of daily races. You can see we are starting in 4th place. We are staying right behind the Citroen right ahead of us as we head into turn number 1, braking right before the 100-meter board. And you see we get a really good entrance going into that corner, so you can see how much time we actually gain on 3rd place, but we kind of get a bad exit here, so we're just going to follow the slipstream and allow the Peugeot's top end speed to haul us forward and catch up to the cars ahead of us as we head into the first time into the chicane of death. You can see the cars ahead of us are already making contact with the wall, and we are just going to follow them through as we now head into this left-hander here, braking right before the rumble strip. So coming to his left-hander at 3rd place, actually goes a little bit wide, and so do we as we follow him almost into the wall, and we're going to catch up to him now as we come out of that corner. And we're going to try to make a move onto the inside here, as it's actually going to turn into the outside as we come into this S section here. Going around him on the outside here because of our top end speed. We're heading all the way to the left, going right after the 50-meter board, sliding our way into the inside, and we get 3rd place. So we are now set at a podium, and it's only the beginning of lap number 1 as we're heading towards the middle section now, and we're following the GTR. So coming into lap number 2 here, we come into the first corner again, and we're just trying to stay right behind this GTR and the other Peugeot ahead of us, as we're just following them in the slipstream. But we actually gained a huge amount of time away from 4th place. As you can see, we are now about 2.7 seconds away from 4th place. So coming to the chicane of death for a second time, we make contact, and so do the cars ahead of us, and the Peugeot actually gets demoted down into 2nd place as we're actually catching up to him now as we head into this awkward left-hander. This turn right here is just very, very weird because this is such a late turning point. You got to brake very, very early, but you just got to wait for the apex and then kind of just wide entrance in, clip the apex, and then keep it very, very narrow when you come out of that corner, because if you go out too wide, you're going to run out onto the rumble strip and you're just going to end up losing the back end. So that's the reason why I think that's honestly one of the awkwardest corner on this entire racetrack, maybe entire game in general. But yeah, jumping into lap number 3 now, we're still right behind the Brazilian now as we head into turn number 1, and you can see how much time we're actually gaining on him as we are now right behind him, almost on his back bumper, as we actually gain on time on the GTR also ahead of us. I'm telling you, that top end speed on these Peugeots, it's just very, very good around this racetrack, especially on these long straightaways. We're catching up to the Brazilian now as we head into the chicane of death. Coming to the chicane of death, we're trying to keep it good. As you can see, the top 2 cars ahead of us both make contact with the wall, but doesn't slow down the GTR. It actually slows down the Brazilian ahead of us really fast. As you can see right here, we're going on board with the GTR. He actually overdrives that corner, and he goes off into the wall. And look at how much time we're gaining on him as we're now trying to catch up to him as we come down into the straightaway, leading us into the S section. So staying right behind the Brazilian right ahead of us. We're staying in the slipstream here as we're going to see if we can try to pull out to the inside, but we're a little too far back to try to make any type of attempt of an overtake heading into the S section here. So coming to the S section here, we're following the Brazilian here as he goes a little bit wide going to the left-hander. As you can see, he's going to get a narrow entrance going into the right-hander, and we gain a ton of time coming out of that right-hander, so we all go into the grass coming out of the right hander of the S section as we now head into this left corner. braking right before the rumble strips. We're trying to get a wide entrance here and try to catch up to the Brazilian, as we are able to do so. And we're still right behind him on the back bumper, as we're both looking onto the GTR and see if we can catch up to him too as we head into this little chicane. So coming to this awkward chicane here, it's really good, the chicane on the normal version, as we try to make a move onto the inside, but the Brazilian covers us. But yeah, heading to that chicane on the normal version, it feels good, but going downhill on the chicane just feels very tight, and you got to really watch out on your apex to make sure you're maximizing the amount of speed that you guys are taking in and out of that corner. So jump into lap number 4 now, going into turn number 1. The Brazilian's able to overtake the American here, but the American makes a cutback here as they're both going side by side now as they head into the straightaway, leading us into the chicane of death. We're following the Peugeot on the slipstream, as he's actually the faster car on the straightaway, so we're just going to follow him. But look how much time we gain onto GTRs. We're trying to make a move onto the inside, but we think twice about trying to make a move onto the chicane of death, as we actually make contact with the wall, go a little bit too wide there as we head out of the chicane of death and heading into the left-hander. So coming to the awkward left-hander, staying right behind the GTRs. We're just braking as late as we can. The GTR tries to make a inside move on the Brazilian, but it looks like it's going to be a drag race here, but the GTR is going to end up losing this drag race as the Peugeot is just way too fast now as we come down into the straightaway, leading us into the right-hander. Staying on the slipstream of the GTR, we're gaining so much time on him now as we're heading to the S part of the racetrack here, and we're just trying to catch up to them now as the GTR makes a little bit of contact with the Peugeot, as that's what the Peugeot's demise is, that it's not so good on the corners, as the GTR has a lot better turning. As you can see, he's trying to move every which way onto the inside, onto the outside, trying to make a move onto the anywhere of the Brazilian ahead of him, as they're not going side by side. So they make a little bit of contact going to the left-hander, and the GTR is able to almost get ahead of him as he inches him out, but you can see they're moving all the way to the left-hand side of the racetrack. GTR bumps him into the inside, and then we have to try to move into the outside and try to let them go through, as the GTR brakes very early going into there, trying to make a cutback, and we got to slam on the brakes too. And now they're going side by side ahead of us as they're both beating and banging there. The GTR is trying to punt the Peugeot onto the inside, and they're making contact as they're going onto the inside, onto the grass, and the GTR is still beating and banging with the Peugeot. The Peugeot tries to make a move onto the outside. We're going onto the outside of both of them, as we're now passing the Peugeot here as we come into turn number 1. On the outside of the GTR, we're going to try to make a cutback. We can't because the Peugeot is right underneath us. And now they're going side by side again as they come out of turn number 1. What's going to happen here? They're going to keep beating and banging now as we come down to the straightaway, leading us into the chicane of death. Yes, they are. The GTR is moving all the way to the left, trying to inch out the Peugeot. We're trying to give the Peugeot a little bump to try to bump draft him ahead of the GTR, but we accidentally make contact with him, and he runs into the wall. As you see, the GTR runs into the wall into the chicane of death. So a lot of things happening here as we are going onto the left-hander now. Coming to the left-hander, you see the Peugeot is now right behind us instead of the GTR. But I feel really bad because we kind of took out the Peugeot by accident by trying to bump draft him on the straightaway. So what we're going to do here is we come out of this left-hander here, we're going to actually slow down for him and let him pass. You can see we're placing the left-hand blinker to let him pass. The Brazilian makes the overtake now, so we give him back first place. And you can see how far back the GTR is compared to us. So we're going to just try to ride with the Brazilian ahead of us and see if we can try to pull away from the GTR and just make it a two-way battle as we come into lap number 6. So coming into lap number 6 now, we're heading to this awkward left-hander and just catching up to the Brazilian ahead of us as we kind of go a little bit wide, but you can see right on the mini map that the GTR is still right behind us. So he was able to claw his way back to the front and was able to make up that 1 second deficit as he's now right behind us, as me and the Brazilian are just trying to run nose to tail and try to just get away from the GTR so we can make a two-way battle and not have to worry about the GTR, as we are now heading to the S section of the racetrack. So coming out of the S section, the GTR just makes so much time into that part of the racetrack. As you can see, he's now right behind us as we're going to cover the inside here, going into the left-hander, braking as late as we can onto the left-hander. The GTR makes a cutback, and now he's on our inside here as we head into the second left-hander. Going into this quick letter left-hander, the GTR is able to make the overtake as we got to back out of the move there. If not, we would have both gone to the grass. And we're right behind the GTR as we head into the chicane right here. So coming to the chicane, we're still right behind the GTR, and he's trying to make every which way a move around the Brazilian as he's going onto the inside now. What's the Brazilian going to do here? He actually gets ahead of the GTR because of the top end speed, and the GTR has to fall back as we're trying to make a move now on the outside of the GTR as we head into lap number 7. Are we going to be able to go side by side as we head to turn number 1? We go very close together as the GTR tries to pitch me onto the outside. The GTR actually brakes later than me, so we're going to try to make a cutback, and we do so. And we are now on the inside of the GTR as we're following the Brazilian ahead of us on the slipstream. and trying to just get past the GTR before we head into the chicane of death. So getting past the GTR now as we're heading to the chicane of death. We're right behind the Brazilians. We're going to back out of here. And I can see that this has been my trouble spot here. As you can see how close the GTR gains time as we're actually going side by side coming out of the chicane of death. He makes contact with us. We make contact with him. And he goes straight into the wall. But he's going to end up losing more than me. But we both lose compared to the Brazilian, as the Brazilian makes a lot of leeway against us. And look at how much time he gained on both of us. As you can see, he's about now a second ahead of us because of that costly mistake. As the GTR tried making a move onto the inside of the chicane of death. But going too wide into the end of the chicane of death, or any part of the chicane of death, honestly leads to most of the time disaster. So we were able to catch up to the Brazilian here as we are still on lap number 7, heading to the chicane. Coming to the final chicane here, we're just following the not the GTR, but the Brazilian ahead of us on the slipstream, as we're just still trying to run nose to tail. But the GTR is still catching up to us as he just has so much better corner speed. But we got a good exit here coming onto the straightaways. We're gonna move onto the inside, or to the outside, I mean, of the slipstream, and we're getting pinched out to the wall. We almost make contact with the wall in the Peugeot. We actually try to keep it onto the inside here as we come into turn number 1. We brake very, very late. The Peugeot behind us is trying to make a cutback, and we're not going side by side, and that invites the American behind us to catch up to us as we get a better exit coming out of that final first corner, or coming out of the first corner. And you can see the Brazilian now has to fall back, and he's in our slipstream now as we come into the chicane of death. So again, the chicane of death has been our really big weak spot. As you can see, the Brazilian behind us is still able to catch up to us as we come out of the chicane of death. I think I'm just braking way too early into it, or maybe I'm just not taking the correct lines. I gotta really look back at the replay and see how to take that corner correctly, as we're just losing a bunch of time. We're losing about half a second on that corner. As you can see now, coming out of the awkward left-hander, we're almost going 3 wide. We actually are going 3 wide now as we come down the straightaway, leading us into the S section. The GTR backs out of there. As you can see, the Brazilian on the mini map is still right behind us, but we are all gonna fall back to single file as we head into the S section now, going into the left-hander. So coming to the left-hander to the right-hander, we're still in front of the Brazilian ahead of us and the American behind us, and we're just gonna try to hold off here. As you can see, they're fighting with each other, banging again, heading into this left-hander. So my hope here is that we can stay ahead of us. We actually get bumped out from the GTR, and that hope of trying to stay ahead of them actually goes away as the GTR actually bumped us out wide. And now we are right behind both of them as we are on the outside of the Brazilian coming to this corner. The GTR brakes very, very early. He makes contact with the Brazilian. Brazilian makes contact with the GTR. GTR hits us out wide, and we are out onto the grass, and we get a 1-second penalty. Let's see what happened here. The GTR just brakes really, really early. The Brazilian makes contact with him, and he just loses his footing. Goes all the way to the right, makes contact with us. It almost looks like he tried brake checking the Brazilian, and that honestly didn't hurt any of them, but it hurt us the most because we get taken out. Plus, we get a 1-second penalty, and then we get hit from behind because we tried getting onto the racetrack. I'm not sure what happened there. I thought I was still into like a ghost phase, but I guess I unghosted right in front of the Huracan right behind us, and he ends up making contact with us. So in a way, that kind of helped us because it propelled us back forward to catch up to the American. But again, we got taken now because of just dirty racing from both of them. And now we have a 1-second penalty, but luckily the GTR has a 2-second penalty, but the Brazilian didn't get any penalties, so he's just way long gone now. As he has about a 5-second lead ahead of us as we come down into the S section. So now it's just trying to focus on the GTR as we head into the S section here on lap number 9. A little bit disappointed with the racing here because of what happened, but we just have to continue forward, and luckily we're still in the podium position, so maybe we could catch up to GTR as he actually goes very, very wide, makes contact with the wall. What happened here? He goes wide and just misjudges everything, goes into the grass, hits the wall, and we're actually back up into second place. So we're able to get some karma on the GTR as he actually makes a mistake, and we are now in second place. So all we have to do is just hold our position for one more lap, and we'll finish at least this race in second place after starting in fourth. So coming to chicane of death for the first time on lap number 10, or actually the final time, my bad. We head into the final part of the chicane of death. You can see that the GTR just makes so much time onto that part of the racetrack, as we just have to get that part correct next time we do a race here, as we are coming to the awkward left-hander. The GTR is popping his way onto the mini-map. As you can see, he's only 0.4 of a second behind us, so we just have to push and not focus on him behind us, and hopefully we don't make any mistakes and are able to hold off him to keep our second place when we come to the start-finish line on this last time. So coming to this S section here again, we're heading to the left-hander, heading to the right-hander, just trying to focus on our marks, try to clip our apexes as best as we can. We get a pretty good run there, but I think the GTR is able to still hold us there. As you can see, he's only 0.5 of a second. Coming to this left-hander here, we brake very, very late, but we actually outbrake ourselves, almost running straight into the sand trap as we are now going side by side with the GTR. The GTR is trying to make a move on to the inside. We got to give him the space there, and we actually run a little bit wide as we head into the grass, but we're still able to hold him off as we're heading to the chicane for a final time, braking as late as we can to the chicane. We're trying to cut right in front of him, but we actually go a little too wide, but we're able to get the inside line coming out here. But the GTR makes a cutback. We go a little bit wide, and he actually is able to make the overtake on us as we're going to follow him on the slipstream here. Are we going to be able to allow the Peugeot's power to catch us back up to the GTR as we are now on the slipstream? 4 places right behind us as he's trying to make him on to the inside, but we're trying to catch up to the GTR. Are we going to be able to do anything here? No, we're not, as we finished in 3rd place. And a very, very exciting, but again, disastrous race because we were on the pace to get at least a 1st place position, but getting taken out by the American and the Brazilian ahead of us because of I say it was dirty racing by both of them, but both of them were just racing way too hard and ended up taking me out, and we ended up getting, you know, a fault for that with the 1 second penalty. So again, very, very fun, close racing until that incident basically. And I mean, this track is really, really fun. Honestly, I could see a lot of cool races happening here this week. As again, there's just a lot of really close quarters and a lot of awkward corners. And I still haven't found out the fastest car. I still think the Peugeot is probably the fastest one right now because of the straight line speed. But you can see that the GTR just makes so much time on the corners. It's got way better cornering than the Peugeot. So we're just gonna continue chipping away, try to make our qualifying laps a little bit better and find some awesome lobbies like this one, and hopefully get some clean racing instead of some of the dirty stuff that I saw here. But anyways, if you guys really enjoyed the video, please subscribe to the channel and leave a like on the video, as it really helps out the channel when you guys do so. I hope to see you guys on the next one. Peace out.